Hello, and welcome back to Dragon's Den Classics. I'm Russ.
And I'm Anna, and we are so excited to have you join us for a brand new adventure in the world of classic literature. We're turning the page on our first book and diving headfirst into a thrilling new mystery.
That's right. This week, we're kicking off a series that will transport you back to the roaring 20s, into the glamorous and sometimes dangerous world of British high society. We're talking about none other than the master of suspense, Agatha Christie.
And not just any Christie, but a particularly clever one, The Seven Dials Mystery. Published in 1929, this book holds a fascinating place in her literary career. It was written right around the same time she was solidifying her reputation as a crime fiction powerhouse with iconic detectives like Hercule Poirot and Miss Marple.
Exactly. But what makes the Seven Dials mystery so unique is that it's less of a straightforward whodunit and more of a thrilling, espionage-filled caper. It's a bit of a departure for her, and it showcases her incredible range as a storyteller. This book is a standalone adventure following a group of young, spirited friends who stumble upon a secret society.
It's a wild ride from the very beginning. From a seemingly innocent prank gone wrong to a chilling murder and a shadowy organization pulling the strings, this story has it all. So grab your favorite drink, get comfortable, and prepare to be swept away.
We're about to bring the Seven Dials mystery to life, chapter by chapter, right here on Dragon's Den Classics. If you want to make sure that you don't miss any of the exciting story, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. So, without further ado, let's turn to page one and begin our journey.
That amiable youth, Jimmy Thesiger, came racing down the big staircase at Chimneys, 2 steps at a time. So precipitate was his descent that he collided with Treadwell, the stately butler, just as the latter was crossing the hall bearing a fresh supply of hot coffee. Owing to the marvelous presence of mind and masterly agility of Treadwell, no casualty occurred.
Sorry, apologized Jimmy. I say, Treadwell, am I the last one down?
No, sir, Mr. Wade has not come down yet.
Good, said Jimmy, and entered the breakfast room.
The room was empty save for his hostess, and her reproachful gaze gave Jimmy the same feeling of discomfort he always experienced on catching the eye of a defunct codfish exposed on a fishmonger's slab. Yet, hang it all, why should the woman look at him like that? To come down at a punctual 9:30 when staying in a country house simply wasn't done. To be sure, it was now 11:15, which was, perhaps, the outside limit, but even then—
Afraid I'm a bit late, Lady Coot. What?
"Oh, it doesn't matter," said Lady Coote in a melancholy voice. As a matter of fact, people being late for breakfast worried her very much. For the first 10 years of her married life, Sir Oswald Coote, then plain Mr., had, to put it baldly, raised hell if his morning meal were even a half-minute later than 8 o'clock. Lady Coote had been disciplined to regard unpunctuality as a deadly sin of the most unpardonable nature. And habit dies hard. Also, she was an earnest woman, and she could not help asking herself what possible good these young people would ever do in the world without early rising. As Sir Oswald so often said to reporters and others,
I attribute my success entirely to my habits of early rising, frugal living, and methodical habits.
Lady Coote was a big, handsome woman in a tragic sort of fashion. She had large, dark, mournful eyes and a deep voice. An artist looking for a model for Rachel Mourning for Her Children would have hailed Lady Coote with delight. She would have done well, too, in melodrama, staggering through the falling snow as the deeply wronged wife of the villain. She looked as though she had some terrible secret sorrow in her life, and yet, if the truth be told, Lady Coote had had no trouble in her life whatever, except the meteoric rise to prosperity of Sir Oswald. As a young girl, she had been a jolly flamboyant creature, very much in love with Oswald Coote, the aspiring young man in the bicycle shop next to her father's hardware store. They had lived very happily, first in a couple of rooms, and then in a tiny house, and then in a larger house, and then in successive houses of increasing magnitude, but always within a reasonable distance of the works, until now Sir Oswald had reached such an eminence that he and the works were no longer interdependent, and it was his pleasure to rent the very largest and most magnificent mansions available all over England. Chimneys was a historic place, and in renting it from the Marquis of Caterham for 2 years, Sir Oswald felt that he had attained the top notch of his ambition. Lady Coote was not nearly so happy about it. She was a lonely woman. The principal relaxation of her early married life had been talking to the girl, and even when the girl had been multiplied by 3, conversation with her domestic staff had still been the principal distraction of Lady Coote's day. Now, with a pack of housemaids, a butler like an archbishop, several footmen of imposing proportions, a bevy of scuttling kitchen and scullery maids, a terrifying foreign chef with a temperament, and a housekeeper of immense proportions who alternately creaked and rustled when she moved, Lady Coote was as one marooned on a desert island. She sighed now, heavily, and drifted out through the open window, much to the relief of Jimmy Thesiger, who at once helped himself to more kidneys and bacon on the strength of it. Lady Coote stood for a few moments tragically on the terrace, and then nerved herself to speak to MacDonald, the head gardener, who was surveying the domain over which he ruled with an autocratic eye. MacDonald was a very chief and prince among head gardeners. He knew his place, which was to rule, and he ruled despotically. Lady Coote approached him nervously. "Good morning, MacDonald."
Good morning, milady.
He spoke as head gardeners should speak, mournfully but with dignity, like an emperor at a funeral. "I was wondering, could we have some of those late grapes for dessert tonight?"
They're no fit for picking yet, said MacDonald.
He spoke kindly but firmly. "Oh," said Lady Coote. She plucked up courage. "Oh, but I was in the end house yesterday, and I tasted one, and they seemed very good."
MacDonald looked at her, and she blushed. She was made to feel that she had taken an unpardonable liberty. Evidently, the late Marchioness of Caterham had never committed such a solecism as to enter one of her own hothouses and help herself to grapes. "If you had given my orders, my lady, a bunch would have been cut and sent to you," said MacDonald severely.
"Oh, thank you," said Lady Coote. "Yes, I will do that another time."
"But they're not properly fit for picking yet."
"No," murmured Lady Coote. "No, I suppose not. We'd better leave it then."
MacDonald maintained a masterly silence. Lady Coote nerved herself once more.
"I was going to speak to you about the piece of lawn at the back of the rose garden. I wondered if it could be used as a bowling green. Sir Oswald is very fond of a game of bowls."
And why not, thought Lady Coote to herself. She had been instructed in her history of England. Had not Sir Francis Drake and his knightly companions been playing a game of bowls when the Armada was sighted? Surely a gentlemanly pursuit, and one to which MacDonald could not reasonably object. But she had reckoned without the predominant trait of a good head gardener, which is to oppose any and every suggestion made to him. "Nay, do. It could be used for that purpose," said MacDonald noncommittally.
He threw a discouraging flavor into the remark, but its real object was to lure Lady Coote on to her destruction. "If it was cleared up and, cut and, all that sort of thing," she went on hopefully.
"Aye," said MacDonald slowly. "It could be done, but it would mean taking William from the lower border."
"Oh," said Lady Coote doubtfully. The words lower border conveyed absolutely nothing to her mind, except a vague suggestion of a Scottish song, but it was clear that to MacDonald they constituted an insuperable objection.
"And that would be a pity," said MacDonald.
"Oh, of course," said Lady Coote, "it would," and wondered why she agreed so fervently.
MacDonald looked at her very hard. "Of course," he said. "If it's your orders, my lady."
He left it like that, But his menacing tone was too much for Lady Coote. She capitulated at once. "Oh, no," she said. "I see what you mean, MacDonald. No, William had better get on with the lower boarder."
That's what I thought myself, milady.
"Yes," said Lady Coote. "Yes, certainly."
I thought you would agree, milady, said MacDonald.
"Oh, certainly," said Lady Coote again.
MacDonald touched his hat and moved away.
Lady Coote sighed unhappily and looked after him. Jimmy Thesiger, replete with kidneys and bacon, stepped out onto the terrace beside her and sighed in quite a different manner.
Topping morning, eh? He remarked.
"Is it?" said Lady Coote absently. "Oh, yes, I suppose it is. I hadn't noticed."
Where are the others? Punting on the lake?
"I expect so. I mean, I shouldn't wonder if they were." Lady Coote turned and plunged abruptly into the house again. Treadwell was just examining the coffee pot. "Oh, dear," said Lady Coote. "Isn't Mr.
Wade, my lady?
Yes, Mr. Wade. Isn't he down yet?"
No, my lady.
"It's very late."
Yes, my lady.
"Oh, dear. I suppose he will come down sometime, Treadwell."
Oh, undoubtedly, my lady. It was 11:30 yesterday morning before Mr. Wade came down, my lady.
Lady Coote glanced at the clock. It was now 20 minutes to 12. A wave of human sympathy rushed over her. "It's very hard luck on you, Treadwell, having to clear and then get lunch on the table by 1 o'clock."
I am accustomed to the ways of a young gentleman, my lady.
The reproof was dignified but unmistakable. So might a prince of the church reprove a Turk or an infidel who had unwittingly committed a solecism in all good faith. Lady Coote blushed for the second time that morning, but a welcome interruption occurred. Door opened and a serious, spectacled young man put his head in.
Oh, there you are, Lady Coote. Sir Oswald was asking for you.
"Oh, I'll go to him at once, Mr. Bateman." Lady Coote hurried out.
Rupert Bateman, who was Sir Oswald's private secretary, went out the other way, through the window where Jimmy Thesiger was still lounging amiably. "Morning, Pongo," said Jimmy. "I suppose I shall have to go and make myself agreeable to those blasted girls. You coming?"
Bateman shook his head and hurried along the terrace and in at the library window. Jimmy grinned pleasantly at his retreating back.
He and Bateman had been at school together when Bateman had been a serious spectacled boy and had been nicknamed Pongo for no earthly reason whatsoever. Pongo, Jimmy reflected, was very much the same sort of ass now that he had been then. The words "life is real, life is earnest" might have been written specially for him. Jimmy yawned and strolled slowly down to the lake. The girls were there, 3 of them, just the usual sort of girls. 2 with dark, shingled heads and 1 with a fair, shingled head. The one that giggled most was, he thought, called Helen, and there was another called Nancy, and the third was, for some reason, addressed as Socks. With them were his 2 friends, Bill Eversley and Ronnie Devereaux, who were employed in a purely ornamental capacity at the Foreign Office.
"Hello," said Nancy, or possibly Helen. "It's Jimmy. Where's what's-his-name?"
"You don't mean to say," said Bill Eversley, "that Jerry Wade's not up yet? Something ought to be done about it." "If he's not careful," said Ronnie Devereaux, "he'll miss his breakfast altogether one day. Find it's lunch or tea instead when he rolls down."
"It's a shame," said the girl called Socks, "because it worries Lady Coote so. She gets more and more like a hen that wants to lay an egg and can't. It's too bad."
"Let's pull him out of bed," suggested Bill. "Come on, Jimmy."
"Oh, let's be more subtle than that," said the girl called Socks. Subtle was a word of which she was rather fond. She used it a great deal.
"I'm not subtle," said Jimmy. "I don't know how." "Let's get together and do something about it tomorrow morning," suggested Ronnie vaguely. "You know, get him up at 7, stagger the household. Treadwell loses his false whiskers and drops the tea urn. Lady Coot has hysterics and faints in Bill's arms. Bill being the weight carrier. Sir Oswald says, "Ha!" and steel goes up a point and 5/8. Pongo registers emotion by throwing down his spectacles and stamping on them. "You don't know, Jerry," said Jimmy. "I dare say enough cold water might wake him." Judiciously applied, that is. But he'd only turn over and go back to sleep again.
"Oh, we must think of something more subtle than cold water," said Socks.
"Well, what?" asked Ronnie bluntly.
And nobody had any answer ready.
"We ought to be able to think of something," said Bill. "Who's got any brains?" "Pongo," said Jimmy. And here he is, rushing along in a hurried manner as usual. Pongo was always the one for brains. It's been his misfortune from youth upwards. Let's turn Pongo onto it.
Mr. Bateman listened patiently to a somewhat incoherent statement. His attitude was that of one poised for flight. He delivered his solution without loss of time.
"I should suggest an alarm clock," he said briskly. "I always use one myself for fear of oversleeping. I find that early tea brought in a noiseless manner is sometimes powerless to awaken one."
He hurried away.
An alarm clock. Ronnie shook his head. One alarm clock. It would take about a dozen to disturb Jerry Wade. "Well, why not?" Bill was flushed and earnest. "I've got it. Let's go into the market basing and buy an alarm clock each."
There was laughter and discussion. Bill and Ronnie went off to get hold of cars. Jimmy was deputed to spy upon the dining room. He returned rapidly.
"He's there, right enough, making up for lost time and wolfing down toast and marmalade. How are we going to prevent him from coming along with us?"
It was decided that Lady Coot must be approached and instructed to hold him in play. Jimmy and Nancy and Helen fulfilled this duty. Lady Coot was bewildered and apprehensive. "A rag? You will be careful, won't you, my dears? I mean, you won't smash the furniture and wreck things or use too much water. We've got to hand this house over next week, you know. I shouldn't like Lord Caterham to think."
Bill, who had returned from the garage, broke in reassuringly. "That's all right, Lady Coot. Bundle Brent. Lord Caterham's daughter is a great friend of mine, and there's nothing she'd stick at. Absolutely nothing. You can take it from me. And anyway, there's not going to be any damage done. This is quite a quiet affair."
"Subtle," said the girl called Socks. Lady Coot went sadly along the terrace just as Gerald Wade emerged from the breakfast room. Jimmy Thesiger was a fair, cherubic young man, and all that could be said of Gerald Wade was that he was fairer and more cherubic, and that his vacuous expression made Jimmy's face quite intelligent by contrast.
"Morning, Lady Coot," said Gerald Wade. "Where are all the others?"
"They've all gone to market basing," said Lady Coot.
"What for?"
"Some joke," said Lady Coot in her deep, melancholy voice.
"Rather early in the morning for jokes," said Mr. Wade.
"It's not so very early in the morning," said Lady Coot pointedly.
"I'm afraid I was a bit late coming down," said Mr. Wade with engaging frankness. "It's an extraordinary thing, but whenever I happen to be staying, I'm always last to be down."
"Very extraordinary," said Lady Coot.
"I don't know why it is," said Mr. Wade, meditating. "I can't think, I'm sure."
"Why don't you just get up?" suggested Lady Coot.
"Oh," said Mr. Wade. The simplicity of the solution rather took him aback.
Lady Coot went on earnestly. "I've heard Sir Oswald say so many times that there's nothing for getting a young man on in the world like punctual habits."
"Oh, I know," said Mr. Wade, "and I have to when I'm in town. I mean, I have to round at the jolly old Foreign Office by 11 o'clock. You mustn't think I'm always a slacker, Lady Coot. I say, what awfully jolly flowers you've got down in the lower border. I can't remember the names of them, but we've got some at home, those mauve thingamabobs. My sister's tremendously keen on gardening."
Lady Coot was immediately diverted. Her wrongs rankled within her. "What kind of gardeners do you have?"
"Oh, just one. Rather an old fool, I believe. Doesn't know much, but he does what he's told, and that's a great thing, isn't it?
Lady Coote agreed that it was with a depth of feeling in her voice that would have been invaluable to her as an emotional actress. They began to discourse on the iniquities of gardeners. Meanwhile, the expedition was doing well. The principal emporium of market basing had been invaded, and the sudden demand for alarm clocks was considerably puzzling to the proprietor.
I wish we'd got Bundle here, murmured Bill. You know her, don't you, Jimmy? Oh, you'd like her. She's a splendid girl, a real good sport. And mark you, she's got brains, too. You know her, Ronnie?
Ronnie shook his head.
Don't know Bundle? Where have you been vegetating? She's simply it.
Be a bit more subtle, Bill, said Socks. Stop blithering about your lady friends and get on with the business.
Mr. Murgatroyd, owner of Murgatroyd Stores, burst into eloquence. If you'll allow me to advise you, miss, I should say not the 7-Eleven one. It's a good clock. I'm not running it down, mark you, but I should strongly advise this kind at 10-6. Well, worth the extra money. Reliability, you understand. I shouldn't like you to say afterwards.
It was evident to everybody that Mr. Murgatroyd must be turned off like a tap. We don't want a reliable clock, said Nancy. It's got to go for one day, that's all, said Helen. We don't want a subtle one, said Socks. We want one with a good, loud ring.
We want, began Bill, but was unable to finish because Jimmy, who was of a mechanical turn of mind, had at last grasped the mechanism.
For the next 5 minutes, the shop was hideous with the loud, raucous ringing of many alarm clocks. In the end, 6 excellent starters were selected.
And I'll tell you what, said Ronnie handsomely, I'll get one for Pongo. It was his idea, and it's a shame that he should be out of it. He shall be represented among those present. That's right, said Bill, and I'll take an extra one for Lady Coote. The more the merrier, and she's doing some of the spade work. Probably gassing away to old Jerry now.
Indeed, at this precise moment, Lady Coote was detailing a long story about MacDonald and a prize peach and enjoying herself very much. The clocks were wrapped up and paid for. Mr. Murgatroyd watched the cars drive away with a puzzled air. Very spirited, the young people of the upper classes nowadays, very spirited indeed, but not at all easy to understand. He turned with relief to attend to the vicar's wife, who wanted a new kind of tripless teapot.
Chapter 2, Concerning Alarm Clocks.
Now, where shall we put them? Dinner was over. Lady Coote had been once more detailed for duty. Sir Oswald had unexpectedly come to the rescue by suggesting bridge. Not that suggesting is the right word. Sir Oswald, as became one of our captains of industry, number 7 of Series 1, merely expressed a preference, and those around him hastened to accommodate themselves to the great man's wishes. Rupert Bateman and Sir Oswald were partners against Lady Coote and Gerald Wade, which was a very happy arrangement. Sir Oswald played bridge like he did everything else, extremely well, and liked a partner to correspond. Bateman was as efficient a bridge player as he was a secretary. Both of them confined themselves strictly to the matter in hand, merely uttering in curt, short barks. 2 no trumps, double, 3 spades.
Lady Coote and Gerald Wade were amiable and discursive, and the young man never failed to say at the conclusion of each hand, I say, partner, you played that simply splendidly, in tones of simple admiration, which Lady Coote found both novel and extremely soothing. They also held very good cards. The others were supposed to be dancing to the wireless in the big ballroom. In reality, they were grouped around the door of Gerald Wade's bedroom, and the air was full of subdued giggles and the loud ticking of clocks. Under the bed in a row, suggested Jimmy to answer Bill's question. And what shall we set them at? What time, I mean? all together so that there's one glorious whatnot, or in intervals?
The point was hotly disputed. One party argued that for a champion sleeper like Jerry Wade, the combined ringing of 8 alarm clocks was necessary. The other party argued in favor of steady and sustained effort. In the end, the latter won the day. The clocks were set to go off one after the other, starting at 6:30 a.m.
And I hope, said Bill virtuously, that this will be a lesson to him.
Hear, hear, said Socks. The business of hiding the clocks was just being begun when there was a sudden alarm.
Hist! Cried Jimmy. Somebody's coming up the stairs.
There was a panic.
It's all right, said Jimmy. It's only Pongo.
Taking advantage of being dummy, Mr. Bateman was going to his room for a handkerchief. He paused on his way and took in the situation at a glance. He then made a comment, a simple and practical one.
He will hear them ticking when he goes to bed.
The conspirators looked at each other.
What did I tell you? Said Jimmy in a reverent voice. Pongo always did have brains.
The brainy one passed on.
It's true, admitted Ronnie Devereaux, his head on one side. 8 clocks all ticking at once do make a devil of a row. Even old Jerry, ass as he is, couldn't miss it. He'll guess something's up. I wonder if he is, said Jimmy Thesiger. Is what? Such an ass as we think.
Ronnie stared at him.
We all know old Gerald. Do we? Said Jimmy. I've sometimes thought that it isn't possible for anyone to be quite the ass old Jerry makes himself out to be.
They all stared at him. There was a serious look on Ronnie's face.
Jimmy, he said, you've got brains. A second, Pongo, said Bill encouragingly. Well, it just occurred to me, that's all, said Jimmy, defending himself.
Oh, don't let's all be subtle, cried Socks. What are we to do about these clocks?
Here's Pongo coming back again. Let's ask him, suggested Jimmy.
Pongo, urged to bring his great brain to bear upon the matter, gave his decision.
Wait till he's gone to bed and got to sleep. Then enter the room very quietly and put the clocks down on the floor. Little Pongo's right again, said Jimmy. On the word one, all park clocks, and then we'll go downstairs and disarm suspicion.
Bridge was still proceeding, with a slight difference. Sir Oswald was now playing with his wife and was conscientiously pointing out to her the mistakes she had made during the play of each hand. Lady Coote accepted reproof good-humoredly and with a complete lack of any real interest. She reiterated, not once but many times, I see, dear, it's so kind of you to tell me.
And she continued to make exactly the same errors. At intervals, Gerald Wade said to Pongo, Well played, partner. Jolly well played.
Bill Eversley was making calculations with Ronnie Devereaux.
Say, he goes to bed about 12. What do you think we ought to give him? About an hour? He yawned. Curious thing, 3 in the morning is my usual time for bye-bye. But tonight, just because I know we're going to sit up a bit, I'd give anything to be a mother's boy and turn in right away.
Everyone agreed that he felt the same.
My dear Maria, rose the voice of Sir Oswald in mild irritation, I have told you over and over again not to hesitate when you are wondering whether to finesse or not. You give the whole table information.
Lady Coote had a very good answer to this, namely that as Sir Oswald was dummy, he had no right to comment on the play of the hand. But she did not make it. Instead, she smiled kindly, leaned her ample chest well forward over the table, and glanced firmly into Gerald Wade's hand where he sat on her right. Her anxieties lulled to rest by perceiving the queen. She played the knave and took the trick and proceeded to lay down her cards. 4 tricks in the rubber, she announced. I think I was very lucky to get 4 tricks there.
Lucky, murmured Gerald Wade. as he pushed back his chair and came over to the fireplace to join the others. Lucky, she calls it. That woman wants watching.
Lady Coot was gathering up notes and silver. I know I'm not a good player, she announced in a mournful tone, which nevertheless held an undercurrent of pleasure in it. But I'm really very lucky at the game.
You'll never be a bridge player, Maria, said Sir Oswald.
No, dear, said Lady Coot. I know I shan't. You're always telling me so, and I do try so hard.
She does, said Gerald Wade. There's no subterfuge about it. She'd put her head right down on your shoulder if she couldn't see your hand in any other way. I know you try, said Sir Oswald. It's just that you haven't any card sense.
I know, dear, said Lady Coot. That's what you're always telling me. And you owe me another 10 shillings, Oswald.
Do I? Sir Oswald looked surprised.
Yes. 1,700, £8.10. You've only given me £8.
Dear me, said Sir Oswald. My mistake.
Lady Coot smiled at him sadly and took up the extra 10-shilling note. She was very fond of her husband, but she had no intention of allowing him to cheat her out of 10 shillings. Sir Oswald moved over to a side table and became hospitable with whiskey and soda. It was 12:30 when general goodnights were said. Ronnie Devereux, who had the room next door to Gerald Wade's, was told off to report progress. At 1:45, he crept round, tapping at doors.
The party, pajamaed and dressing-gowned, assembled with various scuffles and giggles and low whispers. His light went out about 20 minutes ago, reported Ronnie in a hoarse whisper. I thought he'd never put it out. I opened the door just now and peeped in, and he seemed sound off. What about it?
Once more the clocks were solemnly assembled. Then another difficulty arose.
We can't all just go barging in. Make no end of a row. One person's got to do it, and the others can hand him the whatnots from the door.
Hot discussion then arose as to the proper person to be selected.
The three girls were rejected on the grounds that they would giggle. Bill Eversley was rejected on the grounds of his height, weight, and heavy tread, also for his general clumsiness, which latter clause he fiercely denied. Jimmy Thesiger and Ronnie Devereux were considered possibles, but in the end, an overwhelmingly majority decided in favor of Rupert Bateman. Pongo's a lad, agreed Jimmy. Anyway, he walks like a cat. Always did. And then if Jerry should waken up, Pongo will be able to think of some rotten silly thing to say to him. You know, something plausible that'll calm him down and not rouse his suspicions.
Something subtle, suggested the girl Socks thoughtfully.
Exactly, said Jimmy.
Pongo performed his job neatly and efficiently. Cautiously opening the bedroom door, he disappeared into the darkness inside, bearing the two largest clocks. In a minute or two, he reappeared on the threshold, and two more were handed to him, and then again twice more. Finally, he emerged. Everyone held his breath and listened. The rhythmical breathing of Gerald Wade could still be heard, but drowned, smothered, and buried beneath the triumphant, impassioned ticking of Mr. Murgatroyd's 8 alarm clocks.
So, Anna, what do you think of the first two chapters that we just read?
I think they're going pretty well. Some of the writing style is a little bit different from what the modern book or mystery book we would find today. So it's a little bit difficult in the reading kind of area, but overall, I think it's pretty funny, and I think the comedy still works today.
I would agree. I was thinking about the early development of the characters, and there was some light development of this group of friends that even though they're on the high society, they're still a group of friends, and I think a lot of people can relate to this prank that they're getting ready to pull. Um, There was a little bit more character development with the two main characters of the story. But overall, I think it's a good start, and I'm just looking forward to seeing what happens next.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so that's episode one in the can. Thanks for joining us here on Dragon's Den Classics. Up next, episode two, which will be chapters 3 and 4. Please join us then.